friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Ask WrestleJuice. Once again, you guys left a bunch of great questions. Be sure that you are subscribed to the channel and you've hit that little notify bell so that you always get notified when a new question thread goes up so that you can have your question read here on WrestleJuice, or at least have a chance to. You guys left like 100 of them this time, and I'll probably get to, I don't know, 20 maybe. So, you know, the odds of you getting in are probably not great, but... I don't know why I say that. Well, that's so rude. Let's just go ahead and dive into it before I dig a bigger hole for myself. First up, Accursed Hawk. Now that we're coming up to the Royal Rumble season, says, what would the smarter booking move be? Punk or Cody winning the Rumble, since either move could have pretty big backlash. I don't actually think Cody losing the Rumble would have as much of a backlash as maybe some think. In fact, I think from a storyline perspective, because the spotlight is on Cody, all eyes are on Cody, he should be the one who doesn't win the Rumble. He needs to find a way, a path to get to Roman Reigns. This is the way I see it. If Punk wins the Rumble, he's coming after Seth Rollins in the World Heavyweight Championship. If Cody wins the Rumble, obviously, he's going after Roman Reigns. I love the idea of Seth Rollins sitting back. See, here's the thing. Roman's already beat Cody. So in Roman's head, on top of that, Roman is like a raging egomaniac. He's not thinking Cody's going to beat me if he wins the Rumble. He's not sweating it. Seth Rollins, on the other hand, has such emotion invested in Punk. For him to watch Punk inch closer and closer and closer to getting to his World Heavyweight Championship, the main event night one of WrestleMania, that to me is much more interesting than watching Roman Reigns watch Cody Rhodes win the Rumble. It'd be sort of a copy and paste from last year, and I just don't like that. I like the idea of Punk winning the Rumble and having Seth Rollins sit there and sweat out Punk getting closer and closer to his World Heavyweight Championship. I think that is a much more interesting dynamic. I don't think the crowd would boo CM Punk for winning the Rumble if Cody doesn't. I want to see Cody go through something more like Shawn Michaels went through back in 2010 when he lost, when he didn't win the Rumble. He was eliminated and he's like trying to grab onto the ropes and he falls. And then he goes kind of crazy. I think that would be the better route to go. I'm not saying Cody should go crazy, but Cody should have to find his path that isn't the Royal Rumble to get to Roman Reigns. There should be some twists and turns. Remember, it was like a whole 3 months or whatever between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. So let's see Cody get that Mania match, but not until right before WrestleMania. It needs to be up in the air. Is he going to do this? Are there other roadblocks? Maybe they tease other potential matchups for Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, even though he knows. They should build the Royal Rumble with Cody feeling like a foregone conclusion. Like, do packages about Cody in the Rumble, show him training with QT Marshall on how not to get eliminated. He should be all in on the Royal Rumble. He should consider the Royal Rumble like a make or break situation. Like, if he doesn't win the Rumble, he's not going to be able to finish his story. So when he does get eliminated from the Royal Rumble, then he's got to figure out, okay, I didn't plan for this. I thought I was a shoo-in to win the Royal Rumble. I thought my path was set in stone. I thought it was my destiny to finish my damn story against Roman Reigns. And now it seemingly isn't. Roman Reigns might get to take WrestleMania off. So I think that would be a much more interesting story. Cody is always the cool, composed guy until he's pushed to the limit, like we see with Shinsuke Nakamura right now and Brock Lesnar, et cetera, et cetera. And so to see him have to sweat is always more interesting than a guy like CM Punk who wins the Rumble and gets to be sort of the arrogant Punk, you know, which I think is a good sweet spot for him. I don't think anybody would boo that. It's not like Cody is like a Daniel Bryan from, 8 years ago, where the crowd's really going to want Cody to win. I think they'll be totally happy with Cody winning and they'll cheer the shit out of it. But if he gets eliminated, I think people are just going to be like, oh shit, what is he going to do now? As opposed to, oh, WWE's not pushing this guy. We all know it's going to be Cody Roman at WrestleMania. Give us an interesting story to get there, not just he wins the Rumble and then we get a bunch of promos. No, do the more interesting thing. So I totally think CM Punk should win the Rumble this year. All right, the Pittsburgh Kid says, long-time listener, few-time commenter, give some details on your dog. He always cracks me up. It's actually a she. Her name is Gypsy, and steals the show sometimes. Very sorry about your dad, unfortunately, this year. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the sentiment. She's not here right now because she was bugging the shit out of me earlier. She was barking to go outside, and then she didn't go outside. She's old. She's like 12 years old, but she's got a lot of miles on her body. I don't know. She's just a pain in my ass, but she's also my best friend, as most dogs probably are. And I love her so much. So there you go. That's the story on my Gypsy Bug. She's a rescue. And she acts like she's been abused in her past life, but I don't think she was. She's been with me for 11 out of her 12 years, so I don't know. Yeah, she's bossy, and she don't like other people. So I don't know. She's kind of a pill, to be honest with you. Tweaks98 says, with the way NXT has produced great shows this year, would y'all be willing to do NXT shows or premium live event reviews more often? So the short answer to this question is no. And I'll tell you why, and I'll try to explain a little bit the process of what we do at WrestleJuice, at Going in Raw, at the Friendo Club Wrestling channel. So one of my goals for 2023 was to focus on a channel that would be sort of YouTubed up, if you will. So the podcast, it's long form. It's difficult to give YouTube really what it was. So YouTube likes to push podcasts these days, which is awesome. But I've always wanted to experiment with a channel that did more short form content. This is sort of my solo ranty channel. It's more of I do this stuff in my free time away from the Going in Raw umbrella, right? So under the Going in Raw umbrella, at the end of last year, we were like, okay, well, what direction do we want to go in this year? Obviously, the podcast will remain, but I wanted to do some relatively easy to produce, but still fun to watch content for Friendo Club Wrestling, our secondary channel under the Going in Raw banner. And so we decided to devote more time to that. Once Collision showed up in July, it became obvious that, okay, something's got to give. We have so many hours, just a limited amount of hours that we devote to our work week, much like everybody does. Most people work the 40-hour work week. With Going in Raw and here at WrestleJuice, it's probably like a little bit more than that. But because it's fun, like we get to watch wrestling and talk to each other, it's fine if we work more than 40 hours a week. This is a dream job. It's awesome. It's okay to do more. It's our passion, right? So we devote a certain number of hours to that. The rest of our lives is so we can sleep, rest, be with our families, avoid burnout, do hobbies, exercise, normal stuff that you should do in life. So we've got that set number of hours, right, that we work on Going in Raw and Friendo Club Wrestling. If we then take 3 hours a week, which is 2 hours to watch NXT and an extra hour to review it, watch it, talk about it, whatever. If we do that, then we're pulling 3 hours a week, which is 12 hours a month, away from something else, from Going in Raw. So do we stop reviewing Collision? We can't, because that's a main roster show for AEW. Do we produce less stuff for Friendo Club Wrestling? That's a decent revenue stream for us. When we did NXT reviews, the views were not there. The interest wasn't there. I know the people that like it really like it, but unfortunately it was not as wide an audience as it is when we review a main roster WWE show or a main roster, I guess, AEW show. So we'd have to pull that time from something else we do. And we're trying to build Friendo Club Wrestling into a thing, so I don't want to pull any time from that, and we can't pull any time from Going in Raw. So the short answer is no. The long answer is it would just mean that we'd have to take those resources from something else we do. We can't just magically add 3 hours to our work week, because that would then take away from us being human beings. So that's going to be the reason why. Hopefully I didn't come off like a dick there. It's just an explanation when somebody asks, hey, can you start doing this? Starting doing any like Impact reviews, adding New Japan, or can you guys watch Stardom? Adding anything to what we do means we have to take away from what we do, because we've already maxed out the number of work hours that we are going to work. So that's going to be why I know that it seems like it's just 3 hours a week, but that's 3 hours a week that we're not going to be doing something else, and I'm not going to pull it from my family. So there you go. Here we go. John O. Davey says, hey, Steve, assuming the Punk versus Rollins feud culminates at WrestleMania, does it need to be for the title? Despite Seth's best efforts, the World Heavyweight Championship still feels like consolation prize to me. It does not to me. It does not to me. I think that they have done such a terrific job painting a different story with Seth Rollins, that World Heavyweight Championship. Him dealing with his back issues, him dealing with his own ego, wanting to always be defending that title, wanting desperately to prove that he is the workhorse of the company and that he is a completely different beast than Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns shows up from time to time, defends against somebody, has the bloodline come in and interfere, whereas Seth Rollins puts in the hard work. It's a different thing. Roman Reigns and they just call it WWE title these days, but the Universal, Undisputed, whatever you want to call it title, that title has that legacy of the past 3 years behind it. They just made up this title this year. So of course it's not going to come off as the top prize because Roman is basically on a Bruno run. He's on a Hulk Hogan run, Cena, whatever. And so that's going to be the main prize. He's the main attraction. Once that goes away, if Cody wins at WrestleMania, there's going to be a lot more parity between those two titles. And arguably, Seth might be elevated to that top spot in terms of main eventing co-branded pay-per-views. So I don't feel like it feels like a consolation prize anymore. I especially think that the arrival of CM Punk elevates that title significantly. It's just like anything else. It takes time to build up the prestige of a title, the history of a title. It's had one champion, and Seth has done a hell of a job establishing himself as that champion. So I do think that Punk versus Rollins. Okay, so somebody actually had a really great comment over at Going in Raw, and I forget who it was, and I apologize. But they said Punk versus Rollins doesn't need the title. The title needs Punk versus Rollins. And I think that's perfect justification for making Punk versus Rollins for the title. Yes, you could have this be a big grudge match, a blood feud, whatever, something away from the title, a philosophical feud. But if you want to establish that title as the premier title, or at least on par with the premier title in WWE, then yes, the title needs the feud. I hope that makes sense, and that's why I really want it to be for the title. Because on top of that, if you keep Rollins versus Punk away from the title, guess what? The title's going to end up being something like Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest in the mid-card at WrestleMania. It will not main event. It will either be Rhea versus Becky or Rhea versus somebody because she's, the top dog right now. But Punk is new. He's fresh. He's hot. So, they will probably have him main event in the same way that Stone Cold main evented 2 years ago. So yeah, the title will fall to the mid-card if it doesn't have Punk and Rollins behind it. And I just think that's doing a disservice. It needs to have that thing. I'm all for feuds away from titles. In this case, I want that title to be on the line. I love this question. Clever username says, if Matt Cardona came back, do you think he'd be treated like a main eventer or an upper mid-carder with one world title match in his run? I think with Matt Cardona, it depends on the response he gets from the crowd. If they treat him the way that he presents himself in the indie ranks, which is absolutely S tier. It is awesome. I love Matt Cardona's work. If they bring him into WWE as Matt Cardona and allow him to play with the idea of Zack Ryder, I think it would get over with fans in a major way. And I think Triple H has an open enough mind to consider him for that top spot the way he did, for example, with LA Knight. I know LA Knight's probably not on the path to win any world titles right now, but he has main evented against Roman Reigns at a Saudi Arabia show. He's still mixing it up with the Orton and the Styles and the Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. And so I think Cardona can land a spot like that. And then I kind of feel like the sky's the limit. Like if Triple H sees enough in that, there are 2 world titles. One of them's probably about to be shaken loose from Roman Reigns. So I think anything's possible. I think Cardona has all the pieces. I think he's absolutely terrific. I think he could do a lot of really fun work if they brought him into WWE if he wanted to do that. Chris McFadden says, if Taz could still wrestle, who would be your dream match for him? One name comes to mind. He's my wrestler of the year, and that's Gunther. White Brownie says, what is something you hope to improve or expand on here at WrestleJuice? Ooh, what a good question. It's like an end of year performance review. Well, White Brownie, I'm working on a video about WrestleMania 1 right now. And it's going to be one of those videos where you just hear my voice and then you see stills and I sort of joke about it. And so if that's popular, if people like that, I'm trying to figure out exactly what angle to take on it with like title thumbnail. If people like that, I'll do more of that content. Yeah, I'd like more sort of outside of the box type content. Like tomorrow I've got a video going up where WWE released a video where it's like all the champions of 2023, and I'm going to give a letter grade to all of those. And it's just, it's something with a visual aid. I like the stuff with the visual aid. I like doing the Reddit reactions. I really like doing like the hot takes and the Ask WrestleJuice stuff and bouncing off you guys. So I don't know. I would like to try my hand at some of the more produced up content and just take my time with it, not worry about getting it out on a weekly schedule or anything. Just like some premium, videos here to mix in with all my ranty type, just me sitting here talking stuff, which is never going to go away. Baskin Charge says, do you think the CM Punk feud is going to cause people to look back on Seth's run much more fondly? As soon as Punk came back, people forgot how boring his title reign was. I didn't really consider it boring. I thought they were doing some interesting things with with his opponents. Like I like the Shinsuke stuff. I mean, everybody that Seth has fought up until this point, I've been like, man, it'd be kind of cool if Seth lost that title. And to me, that just makes for an interesting story. And to see him continue to sort of break himself over this title, I think it's been sort of a low-key interesting one. A lot of people just sort of see big picture and they say, oh, lol, Seth wins. But I think it's been pretty interesting. I think him taking off the sunglasses and being serious a bit more and more these days is indicative of the facade is coming down on Seth Rollins, and CM Punk really has triggered that. And I think that's been the culmination of all. I don't think you get how interesting this would be without that stuff. Obviously, Seth Rollins talking shit about CM Punk helped this feud immensely. But yeah, I think this could be the thing. This could be the feud that clues people into like, hey, this was a really good run. This was really good stuff. So yeah, possibly. Stashua88 says, given AEW's current state, how big of a blow to AEW would it be if MJF did leave for WWE? So I've sort of turned around on this a little bit. I think AEW has a stacked roster, and I think they've got some really creative people. I've been a big fan of the Continental Classic. I think it's been a lot of fun, and they've found a way to tell some really cool stories using pro wrestling matches. And I really like that. And has it been a big success in the ratings? Maybe not, but I do feel like it's gaining enough buzz so that next year when it happens, maybe like its sort of performance among like the regular folk will be better. I don't know. I mean, look, if something is performing poorly in the ratings and it's not very good, then you could point that and be like, oh man, maybe they need to up their game. If they've upped their game and the ratings are still bad, hey, you know what? That's on them to figure that out. I just want some quality content, and I think the Continental Classic has been quality content. That being said, to this question, I think that they've got some tremendous talent there that, if booked properly, could do a lot for AEW, even if MJF left. I don't think he will. I personally believe that he's already signed an extension. But you look at guys like Swerve, Roosh, Hangman, Ethan Page, if they bring him back up to AEW main roster, so to speak. And I'm just talking about sort of the men's singles, possible main event division. They've got some tremendous youth that, if they treat right, could have their own sort of attitude era renaissance, type renaissance. I just think they really need to focus on those characters and doing interesting stuff with them. And I think Swerve does a really good job adding interest to his feuds, going the extra mile, doing that kind of stuff. Roosh is just an absolute beast in the ring, and I think people are starting to clue into that a lot more. So I think they've got Ricky Starks if they retain him. He needs to get out. I like the chemistry with him and Big Bill. He needs to get away from FTR. He needs to get away from the tag title scene and mix it up more with those guys who are at Jay White. I love Jay White. Those guys are going to be the future of the company, and I think Starks needs to sort of be mixing it up with them a little bit more. So I say get him out of the tag scene. And I mean, Big Bill can still be his heater, but I'd rather see promos with Starks and Jay White, Starks and Swerve, et cetera, than Starks and Jericho, or Starks and I hope Kenny does, I hope he recovers. It's an awful situation with him. But I feel like that older generation really needs to be doing their damnedest to be putting those younger guys over. Static G Medina says, how are you liking commentary these days? I feel like Michael Cole having errors like DYI and others make him feel more human and less like a robot. I agree. I think commentary is doing a really, really good job these days. I pretty much like everybody featured on commentary. I'm a big fan of Nigel McGuinness. I think he's absolutely terrific. But yeah, Michael Cole, it's a shame we could have had like 20 years of this Michael Cole. And now we're getting really, really good. I hope Michael Cole sticks around for a very, very, very long time because he just does excellent work. And, he's still in really good shape and he looks good. And, hopefully he will stick around for a long time doing it. Tim Owens says, do you have any memories of the first ever Going in Raw episode? Did you think it would amount to what it has? I never gave it any thought to long-term Going in Raw. You guys got to remember, next year is the 10-year, 2024, September 2024 is the 10-year anniversary of Going in Raw. Back then, Larson and I had decent gigs with Machinima. It was 2014, so it was still a year away from... Oh, no, it was like 6 months away from our layoffs. But things are really good. Right before I got laid off from Machinima, like 4 months before I got laid off from Machinima. See, I was always a freelancer there. But then 4 months before I got laid off, they brought me on as an employee. I had benefits and everything. And 4 months later, they laid us off. But 4 months before, so it would have been 5 months before we got laid off, is when we did the first episode of Going in Raw. And I do remember the first conversation we had with Dan, where we were going to do a collaborative episode of 10 for the win. And before we got started talking about what we were going to collaborate on, what the video was going to be, we just started randomly talking about wrestling, and he was really into it. So we were having this great conversation with chemistry and everything. And I just said out loud, this sounds like a wrestling podcast. We should do that. And then Dan says, and we should call it Going in Raw, because we're going to do it monthly after pay-per-views going into Raw, heading into Raw. And I remember that. I don't have a lot of memories of the first actual episode, but I don't know why, but I distinctly remember that conversation. It's funny, like the important things in your life, your brain makes sure to stick around for, but not the first episode of Going in Raw. But did I think it would amount to what it has? No, but 4 months after we got laid off, Larson and I were on the same page. He had said something like, one thing we need to keep doing is Going in Raw, because that's something we could potentially make money off of. I remember he distinctly said that. And I remember having the exact same thought in my head, like, yes, podcasts are going to be big and not a lot of people are in the wrestling niche. Let's keep doing this because it probably could make us money down the line. And now it's all we do. Enigma says, do you think it's a missed opportunity that AEW is not really doing the bidding war of 2024 storyline anymore because MJF turned face? I hope they bring us back around to that after World's End. I hope he's outwardly wondering, is this the place for me anymore? Maybe he loses the title at World's End. Is this the place for me anymore? Is this really my home? Or is it too chaotic? Is it too much? Have I burned too many bridges here as a bad guy? And it doesn't matter how much of a good guy I try to be. There's always going to be people gunning after me. And maybe they turn the bidding war of 2024 into more of an existential crisis for MJF, whether or not he should stay or go. So I think there's still opportunity there. Roro Rojas says, what would be next for Cody if he doesn't end his story? Man, another year. I don't know. He goes crazy. Politician Cody Veneer drops completely, and he goes madness. He goes mad. Burning Waffle says, if Sasha Banks comes back, how do you think she'd fit into the WrestleMania card? Have her team with Bayley against Kabuki Warriors. Because that's what they did before, but it was the other shoes on the other foot. Now Bayley's the one getting jumped out of stuff, and the Kabuki Warriors are the ones doing the jumping out of stuff. And then you bring Sasha Banks, and then it's the shoes on the other foot. Actually, a really good idea. Flary says, any surprise appearances at the Rumble, or is the roster too stacked? Okada could be fun. Okada would be amazing. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to stick around New Japan. But any surprise appearances? I feel like Triple H is largely going to go with the roster he has. We'll probably get a couple call-ups. I have no doubt Carmelo Hayes is going to be in the Rumble. Is the roster too stacked? I mean, yeah, it's just there's too many important people, and Triple H is from an era where they didn't do a lot of big surprises like that. In the Attitude Era, it was all guys that were of the now. And I think that's what he's going to roll with, because they're the people who were there all the time. He wants to keep them happy. Triple H actually does seem interested in keeping people happy, which is kind of awesome. We might get a Mickie James, though. I think a Mickie James could be interesting in the Rumble. Bring her back to the company. Give her like a good run, man. Come on. Let's go. Up on the couch. Go. Good girl. There we go. All right. Anyways, now that she's here, that's going to do it for the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Like I said, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the like button since I got my thumbs up, and we'll see you guys around.